So today's topic is going to be on nuclear imaging. So nuclear imaging, this is one that's a little bit different, a little bit more current. So with nuclear imaging, what we're going to be using, the type of energy we're going to use are called gamma rays. So these guys are those high speed, like really high energy rays that are at the end of the electromagnetic spectrum. All right, now the guy who sort of developed this technology, his last name was Anger. Hal Anger was his name. So this is from about 1957. So the gamma camera can also sometimes be called an Anger camera because he named it after himself, obviously. Okay, so we call it gamma camera most of the time, but if you ever hear Anger camera, it was developed by him, which is kind of cool because he's using the crazy intense electromagnetic rays. Okay. So how does this thing work? Well, this is kind of neat. We talked about it already. So you have radioactive isotopes. So remember, again, we talked about isotopes. They are atoms that have greater or fewer neutrons than normal. And for some of them, when having that makes them break down. And for some of them, they release radioactive energy. Okay, so you are either ingest them. You can have the isotopes injected, or you can end up inhaling them. So you as the patient are going to take the radioisotopes or the radio tracers into your body somehow, right? A lot of times it's just, if they're doing the imaging for cancer, it's just this great big glass of water that's got the radioactive glucose in it. All right, and what's kind of neat about this is the radioisotopes are taken up by specific body parts. Like your regular cells are going to love gobbling up the glucose. Your thyroid, it'll gobble up some glucose, but it'll also gobble up the iodine. Okay, so the radioisotopes are taken up by specific body parts. Now, once those parts of your body have the radioisotopes in them, as those radioisotopes decay, they are going to be releasing the radioactive energy out, and the camera is going to pick up that energy. All right, so the radiation released by the radioisotopes is detected by that gamma camera, and then so that we don't have to spend hours and hours on the physics of all this kind of stuff, that energy it might say light on here, but that energy is converted to electrical energy and then to an image by the computer. Okay, so just change this to energy. I don't know why it still says light. That was just dumb, and I didn't catch it. All right, so basically looks the nuclear imaging looks almost identical to the CAT scan. And basically what they do now is you never just get a CAT scan or a PET scan on its own. You get a PET-CT scan. So you're getting one at exactly the same time. All right, so like I said, it looks very similar to a CAT scanner because it's a CAT PET scanner all in one. So while you're laying there emitting your gamma rays into the detector here, they're also shooting X-rays onto you here to get a picture. It's kind of neat how it all turns out. Okay, so why are we going to use a nuclear image? All right, so we're going to do it for if you ever need to go in for a bone scan or any cardiovascular imaging, so they'll give you a PET scan for it. Okay, now they're very cheap on PET scanning because it's really, really expensive. All right, if they're going to look at tumors, aneurysms, or thyroid conditions, right? But because what it's really neat at doing is it's going to show you the functioning of the body. So it's going to tell you where the cells are kind of overactive or maybe where they're completely inactive. All right, so we usually say that the cells that are using lots of energy are going to show up as hot spots. All right, so what are the benefits of this? Again, it's non-invasive. That just goes, I don't even write it down anymore. All right, and you can see the physiology of the body. So you can actually see where the cells are active. It can pinpoint the activity. All right, and again, the results are quick and accurate, and it's quick and easy for the patient. It's fairly painless for the patient as well. There's not a whole lot of worries for the patient. Sometimes it takes a little bit long when you're in the scanner, and of course the room is cold, but other than that, it's way better than open surgery. Okay, the drawbacks, again, we've got some radiation there. So not only are you emitting radiation, now with the CT PET scans, you're also getting the radiation from the X-rays, and it is very, very expensive. The machine is expensive, and the radioisotopes are expensive. Okay, so there's basically two types of nuclear imaging. There's a single photon imaging and the PET scanning, the positron emission tomography. So those are just the two basic types. We're not going to get into great big detail between the differences between the two because it doesn't really matter. All right. So you should have this on that reference sheet that I gave you guys last week sometime. So this is basically telling you what type of radioisotopes they're going to give you for things. So if you go in for a bone scan, they'll give you this radioisotope. If you're going in for a thyroid, they'll give you this. If you're going in for cancer screening, what they do is kind of neat. They take a glucose molecule. We'll talk about this in the future a little bit. They'll take a glucose molecule and they'll replace one of the atoms in the glucose with a radioactive fluorine. And then, of course, your cells just absolutely love glucose, so they'll be gobbling up the glucose that's got the fluorine in here. So here's some thallium for the coronary artery disease. They'll use some carbon-11 to do some brain imaging for addictions. They'll use thallium sometime, or gallium, I think gallium, thallium, they kill you. Gallium for bone scans as well, all right, if they're looking for bone infections. Alrighty, so scans can be done either from the posterior or the anterior, so we can do front to back or back to front, it doesn't really matter. And this question here asks you, what are the stripes? So normally I give you a little minute in class, and there's always crickets that are happening, but take a peek at this and see if you can figure out what the heck are all those stripes. Okay, this is a PET scan, so someone's getting, or a nuclear scan, so someone's taken up radioactive glucose. All right, and these are those little stripes. So I'll just have you take a little peek there. I don't even have music for you or ocean waves or anything like that, but just take a peek and then we'll talk about what it is. Alrighty, so this is interesting because this is a child who is having a scan done. And if you remember about your bones, we have the growth plates at the end. Now in the growth plates, you're going to have really active cells. They're going to be gobbling up glucose because they're growing, right? Your bones grow from the ends. So this is a child. So these are all the growth plates. So in here is where those little cells have just been gobbling up the glucose. So you'll see them at the ends of all the bones and even at the ends of the ribs here. It's kind of neat. This is a really neat kind of picture. Here's the growth plates at the end of the pelvic bones and here as well. All right, so in the end of the bones here. And you'll see some spots there are no growth plates anymore, and that's because those parts have fused. So what ends up happening with your bones is the growth plates fuse at different times of your life. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but if they ever do find a child's skeleton, they can kind of get a general age of the child, because let's just say these growth plates fuse by the time the child's 13, but these ones don't until they're 15. Then if they found a child with no growth plates there and the growth plates still developing there, then they would know that child's between 13 and 15 years old. Okay, so it's kind of interesting stuff. All right, so here's something that you have to remember for PET scans. You have to remember, because you may look at this and go, oh my God, the person's just covered in cancer. There's just so many active cells there. But what ends up happening, if we're using glucose, any cells that are going to be gobbling up glucose are going to show up as being really active. So things like your brain just absolutely gobbles up glucose. So a lot of times the brain will show up. Okay, so the brain is going to show up active a lot of times. Your thyroid is always working. Okay, it's constantly on the move because it's producing hormones that are going to keep your metabolism running. All right, it's going to tell your body, okay, it's summertime, we need to cool off. It's wintertime, we need to heat those cells up and create more body heat. All right, your heart, thank God your heart's beating all the time, right? Because those muscles are using glucose constantly, so it's going to be gobbling up the glucose as well. So the heart may show up. All right, now I told you that a lot of times you're gobbling down, or not gobbling down, but you're taking a huge glass of water with the glucose in it. And if you remember, your blood is constantly being filtered through your kidneys. So your kidneys are going to show up because they are filtering through your blood, which has now got the radioactive glucose that you just drank in a great big drink of water, and it's going to be filtering all that out. And then because it's filtering out the radioactive glucose, or because processing it, you're going to have pee that's in there, or urine that's in there, that's going to have a lot of the radioactive glucose in it as well, or the fluorine in there, okay? You don't want to have glucose in your urine, but you will have some of the fluorine that's from the glucose in there, okay? So if you see a PET scan and it says find the hot spot, the brain is not, you know, yes, it's a hot spot, but it's not the bad ones that we're looking for. The brain is going to show up, the thyroid may show up, the heart may show up, the kidneys may show up, and the bladder may show up, right? So those wouldn't be considered something bad. All right, so the last slide just shows you how the combination of the PET-CT scanner that they started doing, all of them in 2001, they started to combine it. So it's kind of neat, so you can see the two things. So this is a picture with just the PET scan. So that what they're doing here is they're looking at the organs and bones just using the PET scan. All right, here they use the nuclear scanning here. So the person's had the glucose. All right, well, they had the glucose before now. The CAT scan, did the PET scan. So they're taking a peek here, all righty, to have a peek here to see. And then here they can overlay it. So they can see where there's a problem. And so right here, okay, on the PET scan, okay, if you're a really good radiologist, you probably notice that because you can see a little tiny thing here. If I can make the picture bigger, you would be able to see it. So then when we put the PET scan on, we're like, holy Moses, this is really, really active in here. Okay, something is wrong in here. And probably these lymph nodes that are all around here, these guys should not be lit up at all, right? Now on this, it just looks normal. But these guys should not be so active, right? Yes, the part of the heart, yeah, that makes sense. But there shouldn't be active lymph nodes all around here, all right? And then when we look at the CT PET scanner, there's a little bit of the kidneys down here. That should not be lit up. That should not be lit up. So we know that, all right, these cells are really active in here. Yes, it looks weird on here, but more than that, these guys are active in here and these guys are active in here. So it gives you an idea of where the problem is and pinpoints where those active cells are. Okay, so that's all there is for now. Now, I'm not going to put a quiz on for nuclear scanning because in a couple of days, we're going to have a quiz on all 5 types. Okay, just a 10-mark quiz on all 5 types, but that's when I'll put the nuclear scanning into this. What I am going to post though is a chart. So what I want you to do is take all the information from all 5 types of scanning that we did and fill in the chart. So put down the person's last name of who invented it. Put down any key points of how to identify it. For example, for x-rays or for CAT scans, the bones always turn up white, right? Metals always turn up, well, bones off white, metals white, air is black, all right? So make sure any of those key points in there, MRI, the bones look like they've been outlined with black Sharpie. All right, so anything that comes out to distinctly make you understand what is a MRI versus a CAT scan versus an ultrasound, make sure you put on that page. Normally in class, I would have you hand it in, but what I want you to do is just do it for your own notes, okay? I'm just trusting you guys to do this because it's crazy for you to try to take pictures and hand things in, and for me to read it off the screen, I won't be able to see it, and it can only benefit you, all right? So that is your job. Your job is to fill out the chart. Again, if you're totally bored, work on your ISU, finish up the quizzes that you haven't finished yet, and then on Wednesday we're going to have kind of a bigger assignment, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so I will talk to you guys later. Bye for now.